Hey, good morning, Ben with benstudioonthelake. She shall go by the name Pumpkin Spice. So there's where I'm at with this in the part one video. You see the end, and she came about on my drive home from work. I have about a 35-minute drive. There's a chunk of basswood, and you can see it's a little chilly out in the studio, and you'll see that later on in my camera. I'll talk about that. But here's a chunk. I'm trying to figure out where I'm going to get a big pumpkin head out, and true to form, as I'm roughing out this pattern, and it really is rough. Trust you me. This is a character, so I'm not worried about it. You can see what's going on. It's going to be a pumpkin gal with calling her Pumpkin Spice, and she's going to be standing there in a pair of bib overalls and nothing else, and holding up kind of like the girls in the dirndls do in the Oktoberfest. She's going to have 3 or 4 mugs in each hand when I get around to carving those, holding those out for you, and it's going to be pumpkin latte spice, which you wouldn't catch me dead drinking, by the way. I like my coffee black, no sugar, and strong. I could make some other crude jokes like that, but we'll leave that alone. So there's roughing out the main thing. You saw I drew that head down a little bit lower, and I should have drawn it up higher. When I tend to draw a figure, for some reason the damn head and shoulders turn out to be a little bit lower than I want, and I should know that by now, but I don't. So I end up drawing it and then carving it or roughing it out a little bit higher to get the proportions, and you can let it go. There's all that magic work. If you were set out to do a pumpkin video, which I don't think I have. I did the little pumpkin just to be a smartass, and I was gonna try to make it look just like a real pumpkin, and you saw that in a prior video. But one of the things I did was try to make it realistic, and this one I'm going to make the pumpkin kind of realistic too. And as I was getting ready to do the voiceover for this thing, I noticed, man, there's a pumpkin tutorial all by itself. Forget about carving the body and the stuff down below. You can see right there, I've got a lot of wood on the left-hand side there in the front. And the reason for that is I'm trying to leave enough room on the top. And I should have cut it out on the bandsaw. I did a little bit, but I should have left a little bit more. But I'm lazy, and I don't want to screw up a bandsaw blade trying to get every little cut. So there is the vine on the top, and to me that's what kind of makes it look realistic when I put in almost a realistic vine. So here I'm taking that down, and ironically these pumpkins are not round necessarily. They're kind of flat on the top and flat on the bottom. So you could almost call that done, but not necessarily. So I come back and I saved you a lot of the pain. I tediously went around this whole thing with the cuts all bit, which you can get down in the description there if you want. Save 5% with the code. I don't know if that's worth anything to anybody, but it's down there in the description, as well as some other people. So here's my references. There's a real pumpkin, and notice the vine. That's really what kind of makes, to me, what sets it off. So if I'm looking at it, and this didn't film real well because I was rubbing on it and I was going to repaint it, but there's the wooden one I carved on the right. You can see the vine is the same, realistic. So here I'm putting the flow lines of where this thing goes, and you'll see me do this a lot. I know what I want it to do, but when you're carving you have a tendency to get lost, so it's worthwhile to put reference lines in, and then as you're spinning this thing around, and the reference lines only need to tell you what's going on. I don't need to tell anybody else what's going on. Someone can look at it and they have no clue where you're going, but you do. So that's all that matters. So he's got pumpkin's got divots going down through them, and I'm drawing those in now. They're not straight, they kind of curve around, and if you've ever tried to do this, it's kind of screwy. You have a tendency to end up with one or two that don't flow, or that you can't match. Once you get around, you get to the last one, you're like, man, that's not where that goes. So I'm going to roughly cut those in, and then I'll come back and smooth those curves over a little bit. And you see a lot of guys doing the chainsaw carvings. They cut those in with the chainsaw, and that's what turns it into a pumpkin. Because a pumpkin's not round. It's not like an apple, not like an orange. It's got those divots, and they go every which direction. Once you're looking for a pumpkin to carve, they're any style and shape that you can imagine. So this did turn out to be a pretty good representation of just carving a pumpkin, if you forget all about the body down below that I haven't done yet. You'll notice I didn't attempt to get him her completely round, and I was kind of liking that. And once again, you saw my breath there. The studio was cold this morning. It was like 29 degrees, and I cranked the fire up. You're going to see in part of this a little bit of haze in there, and the problem with that is my camera. In the winter, I tend to pull it off the whatever the hell that thing's called, the tripod, and bring it in the house. And the reason for that is it condenses inside the lens, and I'll look up and it looks like I'm sitting in a room filled with smoke, and it takes it a couple hours for that condensation to go out of there. But if I bring it in the house and I got the same temperature, get the fire going in the winter, and I bring the camera out and set it up, I don't seem to have that problem. When I do that, if I'm in a hurry, there's no fix for that other than to grab another lens. I've got a couple lenses that will work for what I'm doing or the way I film, but the one that's in there now is certainly the one that I like. The secondary or the backup is a compromise. Then I've got a couple more lenses that I use to film stationary work, which I should do one of these days, because I've got that Etsy store going, and I've got the pieces lined out, including some ceramics and some painting. I do watercolor and oil painting. I haven't put any of the oil paintings on anything. I do those for different people, but there's some watercolor that's going to go on Etsy. So it really is a studio, and I won't bore you by putting those things on here, but I also fart around with some ceramics, and there are some air plant holders, which if you go back and search, there's a couple of those, I think, highlighted in a video. So I'm taking the same burrs I always use, the diamond or the ruby bit there. And you can see that one's starting to burn, so it's getting a little older. And then I come back and put in the lines with the ceramic stone. It's kind of a reverse taper. I did spend quite a bit of time on this. I've talked about other videos where I will spin these things around and not work on one piece to completion. This one I did spend a little more time trying to get that vine set up right, because it kind of sets the flow of the rest of the pumpkin going down into that. And to me, that's what really says pumpkin. Although you can see a silhouette of it and think, okay, I got it, I get it, I know what's going on here. Switch to a diamond ball. I'm working my way down, touching up the rough edges on that stem, and then I'm starting to feather it down into the actual pumpkin itself. This is going to be 2 parts. Again, trying to stay right around 15 minutes on the editing, and by God made, you can see that that's a pumpkin. If I were to take and put that thing on a stand and block that out, I'd sign something there that said award-winning pumpkin, number 1, something along those lines, kind of like I did with Jordy's whirligig of him up on the stand. That could be a carving in and of itself, but that's not what we're going for here. What we're going for here is a girl pumpkin, because I couldn't stand to just carve a pumpkin. That would be too boring. And this one, there's a couple of videos going up. You'll see one of the other ones, the first portion of that. And here you see I'm putting in 2 nostrils that look like noses, and later on you'll see I didn't like that, and went back to a more conventional shape. So I was trying to draw lips, girly lips up on the top, where you'd see with lipstick and whatnot, and it didn't work. Didn't work out. Hey, while I'm drawing in this face, my wife said something interesting the other day about this COVID stuff. She said that people staying at home and spending time together were getting, the divorce rate had went pretty high. And it goes back to something my granddad, he was a rancher, and I was a teenager. He had retired, and he was spending all his time hanging around the house. And he made an offhand comment one day. He said, hey, I figured this out. Your grandma and I haven't been getting along in the last year, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. Then it dawned on me. I used to get up every morning, 3:30, 4:30 in the morning, and go to work. And now I don't do that anymore. I'm sitting around, I'm in her space all day long. He said, so now we're getting along great. I get up in the morning, she makes me breakfast, I get in the pickup and take the lunch she made, and I go visit people and bug other people. I come home for supper, and we get along just fine. So everybody has to have their space, and people shouldn't be in your space. Well, part of having that space is doing something, occupying yourself, and there's nothing better than having a hobby, wood carving, painting, something that you do by yourself. So those of you that are messing around with the COVID and having issues, take up a hobby, and that'll help you out quite a bit. So that's the best advice I got. My granddad had a lot of things that were pretty smart. And like he'd say, you know, every time I ever got in trouble, right before I did it, I knew that this wasn't the right thing to do. Something told me that this was a bad idea, and it was not going to turn out well, and I went ahead and did it anyway. And if you think about it, that's kind of true, unless you're one of these spastic folks that impulsively just do something off the cuff. But most of us do have an idea before we do something bad that it's not going to turn out good, and yet we do it anyway, and such is life. So I went ahead and put the reference lines in, burned them in with the burning pen. You can see that one's got a red on there. That's one of the hotter ones. And I'm just trying to cut stop lines in that I'm going to follow later on. In this video, I'm not going to show you a whole lot of ruining that beautiful pumpkin that I carved. And you're not going to get a lot of the body, so you have to wait for the second one. But there is where it's at in the second video. Before I put the arms on and do the finish work, you can see that she doesn't have her arms yet, etc., etc. So by all means, like, subscribe, and comment. And do check out my Etsy shop, benstudioonthelake in there. Here's another video that may beat this one up. It may not. The first one, it's also 2 parts. And this is Old Spirit Man with a couple of fairies playing around in his beard. And here's somewhere in the middle of the second video. You won't get this detail in the first one, but that gives you an idea of where this guy's going. So hey, thanks a lot for watching. This has been Ben with Studio on the Lake.